Good evening. Thank you for braving the elements, and welcome to the 183rd Convocation celebration of the Williston Northampton School. As we gather tonight for this formal event, it is worthwhile to reflect on why we do so. Convocation marks the ceremonial opening of the school and is part of our long and notable history. And though it may seem like a lifetime away, Convocation is mirrored by the ceremonial closing of the school, which occurs at our baccalaureate ceremony the evening before commencement. These twin events at the opening and closing of our year call upon us to honor the mission of our school, both in words and deeds, as we strive to live with purpose, passion, and integrity. So as we begin our ceremony tonight, we pause and reflect on our history. As you know, the Williston Northampton School takes its name from two schools that merged in 1971, Williston Academy and the Northampton School for Girls. The Angelus was presented to the Northampton School for Girls by their student council in 1952. It fast became the beating heart of their campus and is now permanently installed on the lawn of our own residential quad. On the Angelus is inscribed the words, "For quiet thought." Originally, it was sounded each afternoon as the young women of the Northampton School for Girls, along with their teachers, paused for a moment of silent reflection. Maria Bergie Dwight Levascante of the class of 1952 said at the dedication of the Angelus that it was a, quote, call to remind us of the necessity of thought. Today, as Williston is an institution devoted to seeking global engagement through critical consideration of academic thought, we can all appreciate the sentiments embraced by countless numbers of alumni who were stirred by the reverberation of that joyful bell. As we now sound the Angelus, I invite you to join me in a few moments of quiet thought. Thank you. We'll now welcome Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Korakowski. The weather reminds me that a 30% chance of thunderstorms can actually mean thunderstorms. So I'm glad we're all in here, and that was Coach K's call. So good on you, Coach K. Good late afternoon, Williston, and welcome everyone. The end of our first week of our 183rd year. A special welcome to our speaker, Miranda Go, class of 2013, and also a surprise visit by Chair of the Board of Trustees and biggest Williston cheerleader ever, John Hazen White, Jr. And of course, a shout out to the class of 2024. You may be fewer in number than last year's record-sized class, but you pack a big roar. One of the magical aspects of Williston, and it happens this time every year, is to watch take place before our very eyes how a community is born out of a convergence of individuals. Some of us live here, and others, all of you sitting in front of me, are pilgrims on your educational journey. But one thing that binds you all together, whether you begin in our middle school or join as a postgraduate, each of you will be changed by Williston. The teachers and coaches who mentor you, the friends you make, and the ideas that challenge you literally to change your mind. Speaking of journeys, this past summer, Mrs. Hill and I had the chance to unplug and connect with the natural beauty of Acadia National Park in Down East Maine. Nearly every day, we found ourselves on some of the most scenic trails imaginable. Some trails were marked by the signature cairns that point the way over bare mountaintops, others by the fading blue blazes painted on trees and rocks. Sometimes we found ourselves in ravines transformed by the heavy rains, where torrents had washed out footbridges or knocked over those very trees which held the directional blue blazes. And sometimes we found ourselves with 360-degree views of the Atlantic Ocean and the mountains of Mount Desert Island. We never got lost, but we had to pay attention. The best thing, though, was throughout our time in Maine, we did not worry about a cell phone. Or text or tweet or anything that starts with a ping or a buzz. And that was a blessing. There's a lot being written about your generation, the generation that learned to handle smartphones as toddlers, and their impact on your mental health, sense of self, or simply how you spend a percentage of your day. There are always arguments to be made on either side of a legitimate debate about technological advances and their impacts on our lives. But here's a point that seems pretty airtight. For every hour you spend scrolling social media, you are not doing something else. The something else that I want you to do to make your goal for the year is to connect with another. You've already heard that mantra in these opening days of your Williston journey, but I want to expand on that for a few more minutes. I urge you to connect with your teachers and your classes, to think deeply, to seek understanding, not just rote replies. Every one of you has reasons for sitting here today, something you want to accomplish, goals to achieve, or a pathway yet to be discovered. The one common denominator is that you are all students, very fortunate, in my opinion, to be taught by the most committed and talented faculty I have ever seen. I urge you to connect with their expertise and passion for discovering ideas. You know, when speaking before a disparate audience, it's always a good strategy to reference topics or experiences with which most of you are familiar in order to amplify a point. So I ask you to consider the two blockbuster movies of the summer, Barbie and Oppenheimer, or the combined marathon Barbieheimer. Just curious, how many of you have seen one of those movies? Oh, good. Okay, that's good for me. Now that I've seen both films, it occurred to me that they illustrate what I mean when I challenge you to think deeply and to connect on a deeper level. I have since pondered the deep existentialism, historical framing, complex human motivations, and incredible cinematography of the first movie that I saw. And a week or so later, at the same Cinemark, when my mind was well rested, I saw Oppenheimer. Thanks, guys. Seriously, both movies ask viewers to dive below the surface of things. Barbie is a playful, satirical, somewhat paradoxical, in a somewhat paradoxical way, and Oppenheimer in a more straightforward, historical, perhaps didactic way. For those who have not seen Oppenheimer, it does not take a rocket scientist to see a genius wrestling with the destructive powers and moral implications of his technological advance. And for those who have not seen Barbie, you might have to know something of the corporate culture that created Barbie and the contradictory nature of the world's most successful doll, one that helped little girls imagine limitless lives while at the same time packaging her in unattainable physical dimensions. Some would say fueling unhealthy images and self-consciousness long before the pre-social media era. I'm not a movie reviewer, but it seems to me that both of these seemingly disparate movies prompt us to appreciate great acting, imaginative directing, and creativity, imploring us as we walk away to think more deeply about them. I did. I wanted to learn more about the Manhattan Project and check to see the artistic license depicting some of the scenes I'd watched. Ditto Barbie. I learned that over 1 billion dolls have been sold by Mattel in 64 years, and it's their most profitable line. And I doubt very much that Margot Robbie's performance is going to hurt future sales. This year, we want you to learn through others, through teams, activities, advisory, dining commons, and then expand those connections throughout Williston and into the larger community. I like that emphasis since Williston has always been a community that places relationships at the top of the student experience. That's why I see former players back at football or hockey games, or hear a teacher say they recently were called about a question from a former student who's in college. By joining and reforming this Williston community, you have already committed to the idea that relationships and connections matter. It's how we learn and live. When I think about the world today and the one that the class of 2024 will step into faster than the rest of you, I see much to be optimistic about, but I also see plenty that worries me. Convocation talks are supposed to not bring you down, so I'm not going there. But I will say in general that those problems will be addressed by citizens and leaders who are well-informed, open-minded, committed to understanding another's point of view. And how does that happen? By connecting meaningfully with the peers around you, by trying to intellectually grasp ideas and concepts that are new or unfamiliar, by sharpening your analytical, reading and writing and creative skills, you're going to be better prepared than you are today. So connect meaningfully with the ideas in all your classes, connect meaningfully to your close friends, and learn to listen to those you don't know as well. Williston has an incredible faculty to guide you along your journey, and if you are open to the challenge to make those meaningful connections, each of you will be changed for the good and be ready to excel. Good luck to everyone this year. Thank you. It's my pleasure now to turn the podium over to Kevin Mwangi, Student Council President.
Am I allowed to bring this down? I know Lee's gonna make fun of me, just... Where you at? Where are you? That's why you're in the corner over there. All right. Good evening, Williston. Students, parents, faculty, staff. I'm honored to be standing up here right now, welcoming the faces of Williston back to our campus. My name is Kevin Mwangi, and for those of you which I haven't introduced myself to yet, I'm a 4-year Kenyan-American boarder from Massachusetts, your senior class president, and you guys know this well already, but I'm also a part-time rapper. As we begin the new school year, I want to share with you all the biggest lesson I've learned during my time here and offer some words of encouragement, reflection, and wisdom to help us make the most of the upcoming year. Before I start, I want to say thank you to Physical Plant, Sage Dining, the housekeeping team, and all the staff who put in extra work behind the scenes to get today and every day running as smoothly as possible. You all are a really big help to this community, and we appreciate you. None of this would be possible without you. It's the class of 2024. It's crazy that we're here already. Our last convocation. For us, this year is going to be full of lasts, with this convocation being the first last of our senior year. It's natural to be upset or sad, but I think once we realize something is limited, it really forces us to appreciate what we previously took for granted. It reminds us that knowing when something is coming to an end is a blessing that we're not always going to have in our lives. And with that, you start to cherish the little things you've done countless times before. That same breakfast omelet you ask Robin for every morning starts to taste a little more nutritious. And if you're really into it, maybe you'll even laugh at one or two of Mr. Doubleday's jokes, but I don't think that'll happen. Capture these moments. Store them somewhere, in your mind, in your phone, even in a little box. As we go into a big year, remember, it's the little things. And when the moment turns to a memory, appreciate the experience. So, seniors, this is the time for us to put our all into everything we do, because we don't have another chance to do it. As we begin the year, I ask you to do one thing. Show up. Practice the lip sync with your dorm, sign your team up for the 3v3 basketball tournament, and be there at the field, cheering on your classmates during their games. And it's not just us seniors. No matter which grade you're in, I want you to show up, embrace each moment, and cherish it, because it doesn't last forever. I finally got my permit last June, and I would jump at any... Come on, bro. I'm the youngest in the grade. Allow it. And I would jump at any opportunity to drive that came up in my house. Luckily, no one in my family likes driving, so I had a lot of opportunities to do so. I remember one day, I was driving with my mom, and we were stopped at a red light waiting to turn. My mom asked me why I didn't have my turn signal on, and I asked her, if everyone in this lane can only do one thing, why do I have to indicate that I'm turning? I haven't taken driving school yet, so I don't know the logistics of that. Amidst the long lecture that followed, my mom said one thing that stood out to me. It's how you communicate with others on the road, Kevin. This car cannot speak, so while you're in here, the blinkers are your voice. I never thought of it like that, but I did not want to be wrong. So I turned it on, looked her in the eyes and said, Mom, it ain't never that serious, come on. But as the summer continued, that sentence lingered in my mind. How could something have a voice without being able to speak? And if a car can have a voice, can a place have one too? I started listening more closely for voices I had previously closed my ears to. I listened at work, and the voice I heard sounded something like, 6 Flags, the hour for closing has now arrived, and we have to say goodnight. I hate that job so much. But I also listened at school, and the voices I heard were our own. I heard Will Chalfont asking me what song I'm listening to. I heard Riley Van Son shouting, "Pack the song." Coach K, I also heard your dress code announcements. We get it. Trust me. But, oh, yeah. And of course, as we're all gonna hear in a little bit, I heard the alma mater. I realized that, just like the car, Williston does have a voice. And because of us, that voice sounds passionate and joyous. Now, it's our job to keep it that way. And how can we do that? Let your voice be heard. Present something at assembly, participate in Why Not Speak Day, even just hang around the quad and meet new people. I know it can be intimidating, but remember, your voice will never stand alone here. And as you'll see in a few minutes when we sing the alma mater, we can really make something beautiful when our voices come together. So, as we go into the new year, I urge you to think about what voice you want this school to carry. Then, be that voice, because it starts with you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Corey Fogg, and I am the Dean of Faculty at Williston, and I have the distinct honor of awarding our faculty prizes this evening. The Grannis Faculty Chair was established in 1999 by Eugenie Grannis, a widow of Charles Gardner Grannis, who was a member of the Williston class of 1929. It is awarded to a faculty member who personifies the pure joy of sharing the process of learning. To participate in and foster students' learning, this year's recipient of the Grannis Faculty Chair demonstrates a contagious joy for content. Whether in the classroom, on the field, or in the dorm, this year's recipient moves throughout the Williston community with humble intentionality. In researching her alma mater, it became clear that the mission of Mercyhurst lives on in her work, for she cultivates the flourishing of both reason and faith in students, combining the core values of mercy, responsibility, compassion, hospitality, intellectual creativity, and reflection as an accomplished alumna. Employing a unique pedagogy among her peers, she grounds her teaching in the student voice, centering the expertise and moving out of the way to draw them into the center, or rather, the midpoint where all radii intersect. She relies on students to present their thinking, challenges, and learning, establishes space for robust discussion and debate around the best methods for solving a problem, and keeps discovery as the heartbeat of her work. In my observations of her teaching, students are learning persuasion, resourcefulness, confidence, conflict resolution, and patience as they navigate open-ended and real-world problems in math. Her methods allow her to lead from the periphery, moving about the circumference and setting up scenarios for students to triumph and trial. A quiet example of purpose for students and colleagues alike, Mrs. Schaefer moves in space with humility and gentleness. English statistician Florence Nightingale is quoted as remarking that statistics is the most important science in the world, for upon it depends the practical application of every other science and every art. The one science essential to all political and social administration, all education, all organization based on experience, for it only gives results of our experience. While some might argue with the Times' Lady with the Lamp, Mrs. Schaefer certainly brings statistics and all levels of math to life, combining science and art for a holistic learning experience. In recognition of the joy she brings to her teaching and to her students, it is my pleasure to announce the Grannis Chair recipient, Mrs. Carla Schaefer. One of the special traditions at Convocation is honoring faculty who have committed 25 years of their lives to Williston by presenting them with a Williston chair. This year, we honor 3 outstanding members of the faculty. David Kordakoski began his career at Williston in the History and Global Studies Department in 1999. Fresh out of UMass Amherst, Mr. Kordakoski has made Williston's mission his 25 years life's work. In 2011, he was awarded the Prigmore Chair for teaching history with a perspective that encourages students to seek out all of the contributors leading up to the events that history has recorded. He has served as dorm head, history teacher, swimming and diving coach, and now devotes his energies steadily to advancing and enhancing the day and residential student experience at Williston. Please join me in congratulating David Kordakoski on 25 years of teaching and leading at Williston. Sue Michalski also joined the Williston community in 1999, having fallen in love with French via the Racius method during her undergraduate time at Dartmouth College. She is an accomplished teacher of French, a Fulbright teaching fellow, a beloved dorm parent at Walnut Hill and now Williston, and she and her family have made this valley home, raising 2 daughters on our campus. In her time at Williston, Ms. Michalski has ushered forward innumerable scholars of French, instilling a genuine zeal for both language and culture. In her time at Williston, Ms. Michalski has served as dorm head, French teacher, and vice president of the Cum Laude Society. In 2014, she was honored with the Hagedorn Family Faculty Chair. Please join me in congratulating Sue Michalski on 25 years of service to Williston. Matt Simpson also celebrates his 25th year with the Williston community, having taught Spanish across all levels before arriving in 1999. An NMH alum himself, Mr. Simpson was innately called to boarding school life at Williston, where brave and honest souls are gathered. In his time, he has served the school as dorm head, squash coach, Spanish teacher, international student program coordinator, chair of the NIAS Committee for Faculty, and department head. In these capacities, Mr. Simpson has been committed to cultivating belonging, placing the highest value on integrity and faith. In 2007, Mr. Simpson was honored with the Karen O'Neill Instructorship. Raising 3 children on our campus, Mr. Simpson and his family have made Williston their home. Please join me in a warm congratulations for Nap Simpson as he celebrates 25 years of service.
That's fantastic. Miranda Go, thank you for coming all the way up from New York City to be here tonight. A decade ago, our speaker sat where you all are. Miranda, I hope that doesn't make you feel too old. Since then, she's found her calling and been fulfilling her passion on Broadway as an emerging leader in her industry. Miranda was featured on the cover of the spring edition of our bulletin. Some of you may recognize her from that. I brought a prop. Same person. When I knew her as a student at Williston, I was either cheering on her exploits as she turned back shots for the varsity hockey team, or spirited the softball team to victory, or ran for the highly successful girls cross-country team. But the best accolade probably comes from her classmates, electing her to be their commencement speaker, something that 2024 will be doing only 29 more weeks of classes from now. After Williston, Miranda attended Wesleyan University, where she discovered that her passion for theater would likely trump her dream of being a professional surfer. Please join me in welcoming Miranda back to Williston. I know we can't wait to hear what you have to offer us, Miranda, and I hope it has something to do with your article. I'm going to quote here for a second, where she said, "I fell in love with the theater because it's a tool for connection. When else do we all get together in a room and experience a story from start to finish and have our minds and hearts changed?" So, Miranda, that was a great quote. I hope it's a segue into what you delivered today. Please welcome Miranda.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, Mr. Hill, for that introduction. It's very great to be back here today. To be honest, when I was writing this speech, I was getting a little nervous. Maybe because Williston means so much to me that I want to make sure I get it right. Or maybe because the last time I gave a speech, it was here for my graduation 10 years ago. But I was thinking about the convocation speeches I heard when I was a student here, and I couldn't remember any of them. So that, to be honest, took off some of the pressure and made me feel a little bit better. What I remember from the convocation were not the remarks or words of wisdom that were shared with us, but the anticipation of what it meant to be here at that moment, as you are now. My freshman year, I had no clue what to expect. My parents had dropped me off a week before. I just spent 3 days in the woods with 100 people I'd never met. I learned you don't do that anymore. All of a sudden, I was here at boarding school. My sophomore year was a little more solid. I remember the excitement of seeing people who over that first year became my best friends and who I had missed deeply that summer. I remember moving into a new building and hoping that that year would be just as good as the first one was. My junior year, there was all of a sudden this new anticipation. As Mr. Hill said, I was a goalie on the girls' ice hockey team. The goalie before me had graduated the year before, so this year was finally my shot. This was my year to prove to myself that I could do it. The idea of college was also looming. And then all of a sudden, it was senior year. And this was it, the last go-around, but still lots ahead. I was asking myself questions like, where would I be this time next year? Would everything I'd worked for up until this point pay off? Being back here also makes me think of how great it is that Williston so clearly marks its beginnings and ends. Like all good stories, there's a clear beginning as we find ourselves here today, and a clear ending. I think this is part of what makes our time at Williston so fond. We can easily look back at who we were at the start and who we grow to become by the end. And so, what should the beginning of this year be? Or better yet, where do we all want to find ourselves at the end? If you have no clue how to answer those questions for yourselves, that's completely fine. Because in all fairness, I don't know if I would have been able to answer that question for myself if I were in your shoes. Because if I've learned anything since graduating, it's that you really can't predict where life will lead you. Upon preparing for this speech, I reread an interview that I gave for Williston with my then teacher, Diane Sawyer. I told her that when I graduated, I wanted to work in sports marketing. 10 years later, I'm now a Broadway producer. If you had told me this is what I would be doing with my life now, there's no way I would have believed you. I had done 0 theater when I was here at Williston, and I had no intent on starting. Because why would I? Like I said, I was a hockey player. Williston was one of the best teams in the league, and I would go on to play in college. Hockey was everything I loved, and it made me the person that I was. Backtracking a little bit, remember I told you the last time I gave a speech was when I gave the commencement address a few years during my graduation. Last night I was rereading this speech to prepare for this, and a few things stuck out. Number 1, the fact that I wrote it the night before graduation. I pulled an all-nighter and wrote it while everyone else had to sleep over in the common room. I finished it probably 2 hours before graduation, read it over once, and then decided it was good to go. I'd never spoken in front of a crowd of that size before, but somehow that didn't faze me at all. This also made me realize how young I was back then, and how much I envy all of you for the energy and adrenaline you're all capable of today, because it doesn't happen anymore. Number 2, I got very sentimental during my speech. There's a part where I talked about learning new things once my class was fully gone from Williston. I talked about learning new schedules, new campuses, new restaurants. And I don't know if anyone caught this at the time, but I remember my voice cracking unexpectedly and feeling a rush of emotion when I talked about getting a new roommate in college and not knowing if they would ever be able to match the one I had here. And number 3, this is where the speech got good. I was inspired to talk about one of the aha moments I had earlier my senior year after hearing a speech by the now late Mr. Swanson, who had spoken the night before. These aha moments are the light bulb moments that seem to appear out of nowhere. They're revelations. They're moments of clarity that make you see yourself and your life in ways you never had before. And today I wanted to tell you about 2 aha moments I had before and after my time at Williston. The first aha moment was when I fell in love with ice hockey. It was a moment no one in my family saw coming, but once I started, I couldn't be stopped. For the first time in my life, I knew what I wanted. Flash forward to 2009, I'm here at Williston after being recruited by Ms. Talbot to play hockey here on the girls' team. Now I know the team is the top team in the NEPSAC today and has done the unthinkable and won back-to-back championships in the past 2 years. But this was not always the case. When I was here, we were good, but under Ms. Talbot's guidance, we became great. And that was something that was very exciting for me to be a part of. I already loved being a hockey player before I came to Williston, but being a part of a legacy that we were all creating together made it one of the most special experiences I could have asked to be a part of. And I wore this legacy like a badge of honor. Even though I never got the most playing time or had the best stats in the league, I was so proud to be a part of this team. Hockey was where I came from, it was who I was here at Williston, and it was who I assumed I would go on to become once I left and went away to college. As you can probably guess by now, that's not exactly what happened. The second aha moment for me was in college when I discovered that this relationship with hockey had changed. When I went away to college after graduating from Williston, I remember a group of student counselors telling my class that we would not leave the same people as we were when we arrived. I didn't like this idea because I loved the person that I was. After 4 years at Williston, I thought I knew exactly who I was and who I wanted to continue to be. Or so I thought. When I got to college, the parts that I thought would be easy were actually hard. Hockey was not the same hockey that I had fallen in love with and was proud to be a part of while here at Williston. And I was developing new interests, and whether I wanted to admit it or not, hockey was holding me back from seeing where those new interests could lead. I was changing, and I was growing. And after 2 unhappy years of playing in college, I decided to quit. And this is where theater comes into play. If any of you have ever been to a Broadway show, you probably have a general idea of what I do as a producer. Part of that might be true. I do sit in on auditions and listen to people sing, and I watch them dance. I attend marketing meetings where we talk about how we can make our show the next big hit, like Wicked or Hamilton. But what I really do is bring stories to life that I love, and I connect the rest of the world to them. I champion stories that show people who they are and who they can be. And to me, theater is like holding up a mirror. It's powerful because we see ourselves reflected back at us. And this is a vulnerable thing, because when we see ourselves on stage, we see everything. We see the good, the bad, the ugly, our fears, anxieties, and everything we work so hard to hide so no one else sees or knows about them except for us. But what makes theater so compelling to me is that it shows us a path to overcome and conquer these fears and anxieties. It puts us in situations where we can allow ourselves to be brave. When I quit hockey, it was terrifying. Hockey was everything I had known up until that point. My teachers, my coaches, they were my people. Hockey was what I had dedicated my life to, it was what had brought me the most joy, and all of a sudden, I was making a decision to put that side of me to rest and start afresh as someone new. I was having my own brave moment. And of course it was scary, but it allowed me to open a door to a world that I had never known even existed or was available to me. And while hockey and theater seem worlds apart, I think my life is actually unfolded in the way it was meant to. I loved hockey because I loved being a part of something that was bigger than myself. I loved working towards a common goal and seeing myself and each of my teammates rise to the occasion in our own individual ways. Theater's not too different. It takes 5 to 7 years to get a new musical up. It takes a village of hundreds of people, from the actors to the designers to the crew who actually build the sets, to the people at the box office who sell the tickets. It's working towards a common goal and creating something that didn't exist before. And I think deep down, this is what I was meant to do, even though I hadn't known it before. I believe there are many chapters in life. What makes life life are all the beginnings and endings we experience, and strength we have inside ourselves to see each of those beginnings and endings through. Today we find ourselves at a new beginning. You may not know exactly how you'd like this next year to play out, or you may have no clue. But either way, I hope you allow yourself to lean into the moments that ask you to be brave, whatever that looks like to you. And celebrate each other when we see our friends and peers step into those moments of bravery themselves. Trust your instincts, listen to what your hearts are telling you, and have fun, because if it's not fun, then it's not worth it. Thank you, and I hope you have a great year.
Miranda, thank you very much. That was a wonderful story, brave to share about your journey and being willing to change and open new chapters. I think that's a wonderful lesson for all of us tonight. Mr. Halligan, would you please come up and help lead us in singing the alma mater, and that will close the service.
Please stand and join us in singing the alma mater.
So ladies and gentlemen, just a quick update on where we are. That is the end of our program. We are at this point going to have the faculty process out. I'd like to have the students stay where you are. We're going to let the worst of the thunderstorms pass so we don't all have to walk to dinner in the rain. Sounds like about 5 more minutes. So the faculty will process out and then just relax, enjoy, take a few pictures. Okay, we'll let the faculty process.